She had always believed the world revolved around her until the moment she pressed the button on her pepper spray. One man, one hat, and one word: general. That single encounter flipped her life upside down. And to think, it all began with a morning latte and her relentless obsession with being right, no matter the cost. Linda, a 39-year-old woman with a reputation for being outspoken and confrontational, started her day as usual at a local coffee shop. After ordering her favorite soy latte, she stepped onto the patio and noticed an older man sitting quietly sipping his coffee. What caught her attention, however, was the bright red "Make America Great Again" hat on his head. For Linda, the hat symbolized everything she despised, and her simmering frustration quickly transformed into a wave of anger she couldn't contain. Linda couldn't hold back as she passed the man, her eyes locked on the bright red "Make America Great Again" hat atop his head. Her heels clicked sharply on the patio, signaling her approach, and with a voice loud enough to turn heads, she addressed him. "Seriously, you've got the nerve to wear that here," she said, her tone dripping with disdain. The man, who appeared to be in his 60s, calmly folded his newspaper and looked up, puzzled. "Excuse me, do I know you?" he asked, his tone polite yet firm. Linda's cheeks flushed with anger. "Oh, you don't need to know me to know you're a disgrace," she snapped. "People like you are the problem with this country." The man, whose name was Tom, simply raised an eyebrow and replied evenly, "It's just a hat, ma, I am. Maybe take a second to think before you start judging strangers." His response only fueled Linda's indignation. She pointed an accusing finger at him. "A hat? Do you even realize what that represents?" "People like you make me sick," she shouted, her voice rising as if to drown out reason itself. Tom leaned back in his chair, still calm. "Lady, I'm just trying to enjoy my coffee." "Maybe you should try doing the same," he said, his tone nonchalant. This casual dismissal sent Linda into overdrive. She accused him of ignoring her, claiming that was typical of people like him. Her voice grew louder, and her dramatic gestures attracted the attention of other patrons. Phones discreetly recorded the unfolding scene as Linda's frustration boiled over, determined to make her point, no matter how unfounded or inflammatory her accusations became. Linda's tirade quickly became the center of attention. Her voice grew louder with every word, and her exaggerated gestures made it impossible for anyone at the coffee shop to ignore her. Bystanders, initially trying to mind their own business, began glancing over. A few discreetly pulled out their phones to record the escalating confrontation, sensing it was about to take a dramatic turn. Tom, still seated and trying to remain calm, attempted to defuse the situation. "Look, lady, I'm just here to enjoy my coffee. Maybe you should do the same," he said, his tone measured. But Linda wasn't about to back down. "Ignore me? That's exactly what people like you do," she shouted, flailing her arms to emphasize her point. As whispers rippled through the patio and the tension thickened, Linda suddenly reached into her oversized bag. From within, she pulled out a bright orange canister of pepper spray. Gasps echoed around her as she raised it, her face a mask of self-righteous fury. "For everyone you've ever oppressed," she declared, her voice shaking with emotion. Before anyone could intervene, Linda pressed the button. A sharp mist sprayed directly into Tom's face. He let out a pained cry, stumbling backward as his coffee cup hit the ground. His hands flew to his face, desperately trying to wipe away the sting. But it was no use. The patio erupted into chaos. Some patrons rushed to help Tom, whose face was turning red and swollen, while others continued recording the shocking scene. Meanwhile, Linda, standing her ground, shouted, "You all saw it. He provoked me, I had no choice." Her words hung in the air, met with stunned silence and disbelieving stares from the crowd. The scene at the coffee shop descended into chaos after Linda's shocking attack. Tom, now on his knees, clutched his face as tears streamed uncontrollably. A barista sprinted outside with a bottle of water, kneeling beside him to rinse the pepper spray from his eyes. "Hang on, sir," she said gently, while others around them looked on in shock. Several patrons voiced their disapproval of Linda's actions. "Are you out of your mind?" one customer shouted. "He was literally just sitting there," another muttered. "This is unreal," while someone else called for emergency services. Despite the criticism swirling around her, Linda remained defiant. "You all saw it," she exclaimed, spinning around to address the crowd. "He provoked me, I had no choice." Her words, however, found no sympathy. Phones captured every moment, and murmurs of disbelief spread as patrons whispered among themselves. Ignoring the growing backlash, Linda whipped out her phone and dialed 911. "Yes, hello," she said into the receiver, her voice sharp and self-righteous. "There's a dangerous man harassing me at the coffee shop on Main Street. I need officers here immediately." The crowd groaned collectively. "Oh, come on," a woman muttered from the back. Minutes later, the sound of sirens cut through the tense atmosphere. 2 police cruisers arrived and uniformed officers stepped onto the patio. They immediately surveyed the scene. Tom, still seated on the ground, his face red and swollen, being tended to by the barista, while Linda stood a few feet away, clutching her pepper spray canister with an air of smug defiance. One officer addressed the crowd. "What's going on here?" he asked, his eyes moving between Linda and Tom. Linda wasted no time marching up to the officers, her finger pointed accusingly at Tom. "That man tried to threaten me," she declared. "I defended myself." The officers exchanged glances before turning their attention to Tom, who was being helped to his feet by the barista. One officer's expression shifted as he studied the older man. "Wait a second," he said, stepping closer. "Who's that?" "General Jason Carter." Linda froze, her confidence wavering. "General? What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice tinged with nervousness. The officer ignored her, addressing Tom directly. "Sir, I didn't recognize you at first. Are you all right?" Tom nodded slowly, his voice raspy but steady. "I'll live," he said, holding a damp napkin to his face. Then, with a pointed glance at Linda, he added, "But this woman attacked me for no reason." Linda's jaw dropped. "Excuse me? No reason? He provoked me," she stammered, attempting to regain control of the narrative. The second officer cut her off. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "I think you need to explain why you thought spraying a retired U.S. Army general with pepper spray was a good idea." Linda's face turned pale, and for the first time her bravado crumbled. Around her, the crowd watched with a mix of fascination and satisfaction as her story unraveled. The once confident Linda now stood frozen, her actions exposed for what they truly were. Linda's smug expression faltered the moment the officer referred to Tom as General Jason. Her confidence wavered as the weight of the title sank in. "General? What do you mean, General?" she stammered, her voice trembling. The officer ignored her, turning back to Tom with a look of respect. "Sir, I didn't realize it was you. Are you okay?" Tom, still holding a damp napkin to his reddened face, gave a slight nod. "I'll manage," he said, his tone calm but laced with discomfort. Then, he turned to Linda, his piercing gaze cutting through remaining bravado. "You didn't know who I was, and that's supposed to excuse your actions?" he asked, his voice steady and commanding. Linda opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her confidence crumbled as Tom continued, his words sharp and deliberate. "Tell me," he said, "do you attack everyone who wears something you don't agree with, or am I just special?" Her face drained of color, and she stumbled over her words. I thought." "You thought nothing," Tom interrupted firmly. "That's the problem. You acted out of pure ignorance, without a second thought. And now you're trying to justify it. That's not how this works." The crowd was silent, the tension palpable as Linda stood there, visibly shaken. For the first time, her actions seemed to catch up with her, and the realization of her mistake left her speechless, with nowhere to hide. Linda stood frozen, her face pale as the officer addressed her. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some ID," said firmly. She hesitated, glancing nervously at the crowd, which was now fully engaged in watching her downfall. With trembling hands, she rummaged through her bag and handed over her ID. The officer examined it briefly, then exchanged a knowing glance with his partner. "All right, ma'am," the officer said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "You're under arrest for assault." The announcement landed like a thunderclap, and Linda's eyes widened in disbelief. "Assault? No, you don't understand," she protested, her voice rising in desperation. "He provoked me. I was defending myself." Her protests fell on deaf ears. The second officer moved closer, taking her arm as she resisted. From the crowd, someone shouted sarcastically, "Yeah, by drinking his coffee." Real dangerous laughter rippled through the onlookers, followed by scattered applause. Phones were still recording as Linda continued to protest. "You all saw it. He was provoking me," she shouted, but the crowd wasn't buying it. "No, lady," someone called out. "We saw you lose it." The officers gently but firmly guided Linda toward the police car. She looked around desperately, hoping someone would defend her, but all she found were disapproving glares and smirks. With every step, the realization of her situation seemed to sink in deeper. As the door to the police car closed behind her, scattered applause broke out from the remaining bystanders. Linda's protests were muffled as the officers prepared to drive away, leaving Tom standing tall with the help of a barista, watching the scene unfold in calm silence. Videos of the incident were already flooding the internet, ensuring Linda's actions would not be forgotten anytime soon. The incident quickly went viral as videos flooded social media, showing every moment of Linda's outburst and the shocking pepper spray attack. Viewers across the internet were outraged, and Linda became an instant symbol of overreaction and entitlement. Her name trended for all the wrong reasons, and memes mocking her behavior spread like wildfire. The backlash was swift. Linda's employer, after seeing the viral footage, terminated her employment by the end of the day, citing behavior unbecoming of their organization. Neighbors whispered about her in the streets, and former friends stopped returning her calls. Overnight, Linda became a social pariah. Meanwhile, Mia Johnson's calm and composed demeanor during the ordeal earned him widespread praise. In a local news interview, he spoke with dignity, urging people to think before they act. His words, "We live in a time where impulsive actions lead to chaos," resonated with many and were widely shared alongside the footage. The coffee shop became a local landmark, with people visiting to sit at General Jason's table while Linda's actions served as a cautionary tale of thoughtless behavior in the digital age. Mia Johnson's composed response during a local news interview became a rallying cry, urging people to pause and think before reacting. His words highlighted the importance of restraint and respect, elevating him to the status of a folk hero. In contrast, Linda's impulsive actions and public meltdown left her reputation in ruins. She became a cautionary tale of how rash decisions and intolerance can have lasting consequences, while Greg's dignity and calm demeanor served as an inspiring example of grace under pressure.